how do we define man and woman?
But why though?
But
Why do we need to get caught up in genitalia? I don't understand it. Help me understand why.
do you have a pet?
Yeah, sure.
Is it a dog?
It's a dog.
Is it a boy or girl?
It's a girl.
How do you know? Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Right Corner podcast. This time we're going to have a video portion. This is kind of a part two to our previous discussion. And I'm trying to have a series where I bring people on the other side of the political ideological aisle so that we can have a chance to see where we're aligned, where we're different, try to have a kind of a civil discussion where possible. So, with no further ado, Brian, if you would like to please reintroduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, RC, great. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. My name's Brian Wendle. I want to start off by kind of saying I have a real respect for the fact that you're willing to have this conversation. Most people I think on both sides are just really only talking to those who agree with them. And so this takes a degree of confidence that I think we should have more of societally, but as men too, So I appreciate, yeah, I'd love to have an honest conversation, which means I'll probably push back on some things. I also expect pushback. I'm of the firm belief that there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. I'm not naive to also think that I'm going to change you or any of these, of your listeners' minds. But again, I think this conversation is important and hope that folks can approach it with an open mind as they listen. So, real quick, I guess just to start us off is from my introduction to myself. I identify kind of on the left, right? But to that point of there being more that unites us than divides us, ultimately, like a point I was trying to make last time that I think is a great spot to start off is I think we're all navigating systems that we didn't design and that we can't really fully opt out of. And those systems are controlled by folks who don't have your and my best interests in mind. And they wield a ton of power, and they would rather keep us pointing at each other than us look up and acknowledge that they're enforcing systems that we didn't opt into, So before we really get into anything, because I know we may use some politically charged language, I was hoping we might be able to just align on kind of some basic history stuff, if you can humor me, I guess, as we start off. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think this is core to a lot of what you think about as you're navigating the dating world and just kind of job prospects and all these different things. All right. So men on average are physically larger and stronger than women. Yes.
Males are, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Well, because I'm just saying, because there's a lot of like controversy of how to define a man, but yes, I would agree that males are.
The testosterone, fueled individuals among us have been historically larger, more physically bigger than women. Yeah. All right. So through much of human history, physical strength was a primary source of power. Who controls land, who controls resources, political authority, legal rights. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. In that context, right, men have used that advantage, sometimes deliberately, sometimes it's structurally, to organize societies in ways that center male authority. Women couldn't own property, couldn't vote, couldn't enter most professions, needed husband's legal permission to do certain things. I mean, this is in living memory of our country, right? Okay, so that system that I want to name that's been built up over thousands of years, around male physical political dominance, that is what patriarchy is. And I use it as a description, not an accusation. I'm not pointing at you, RC, and saying you're an oppressor, right? But the question isn't whether that reality exists. It's whether the institutions, the laws, the cultural norms, the power structures that are built are still shaping how we operate today. And I'd say, yeah, that's absolutely the case. And it's not because men are villains, right? But it's because systems have outlasted the times in which they were built, and we're still living in those systems today. So can we align on that? Does that make sense? I just want to historically point at kind of the situation as a kind of a foundational point, if that's cool.
Yeah. Historically, societies through most of human history, minus a few exceptions that might have been
Sure.
matriarchal, were patriarchal. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. My argument and what I understand is that patriarchy isn't just a problem for women. And I mean that as it's a problem. And it's the same system that has held that domination over women has told men a lot of things about who we are as men. I think it's told us that we can't feel. It's told men that our value is entirely derived in what we can provide and what we can protect. And that if we can't provide and protect, that we're worthless, is kind of how
Okay.
I see this,
So
right?
I want to
Yeah.
I do want to
Yeah.
put a pin there because this is something I do want to address. Uh, but I wanted to start with our economic differences and then
Okay.
kind
Okay.
of gravitate over to our social differences.
I guess what I'm saying is that I think this is a critical underpinning of the economic system. I mean, patriarchy is a system, capitalism is a system, and these are the things we're operating within that we didn't have a choice necessarily to opt into, but is the reality of the systems that we live. And I think I guess my point is that these systems, whether it is patriarchy or late stage capitalism, they apply to the trad wife, who performs femininity on Instagram. It applies to the simp, as your words, of like someone who pays for access to it. It applies to you calling them out. It applies to me talking to you about calling them out. It's that we're all responding to incentives of the system that's been put in place. And I guess that I think is so critical just as a foundation of how we got to where we are, because we can disagree about specific policy implementation. But if we don't look at how we got to where we are and acknowledge the distinction between us as individuals and the systems that we are forced to operate within, it's hard to have this conversation, if that makes
Well,
sense.
okay. I'll make my position pretty clear on what
Yeah.
I've heard you say so far. It's not that I think patriarchy is bad or good. We're just a patriarchal species. So I think we have a fundamental disagreement here. And I think that patriarchy is, again, it's not a moral question. It's just what we are. Just like chimpanzees are they're patriarchal. Orca whales are matriarchal. There's plenty of different species we could point to. Most mammals, maybe with a few exceptions here and there, are patriarchal. This idea that we're this egalitarian species, if you view it through the lens of evolution, which I don't, I believe we were created patriarchal. Sorry, I get the two terms confused sometimes. But if you view it through the lens of evolution, you think that all these species evolved for billions of years, and then human beings decided, okay, we're egalitarian, we're the exception to the rule. No, it is more so a question of science and biology. Testosterone uniquely affects the brain of males in development from childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, and how estrogen uniquely affects the brains of females from childhood, adolescence, into adulthood. We are different. We have roles. So that's kind of my foundational understanding to it. But you're saying that this kind of underpins your economic view.
Yeah, I think, and I don't disagree with you that men and women are different. I don't know. I don't know who would say that we're the same. I think that there's a desire for justice applied in the same way, equity applied in the same way. But I don't think there's anyone out there that's saying men and women are exactly 100% the same. So I don't disagree with you there. I guess I, it's what to you is patriarchy? Like, are there benefits? You say it's immoral, it's amoral, I guess, right? Is your point? Like, what are the characteristics of a patriarchal society then? And can we influence it, or that's just by nature the way it is?
I think it's by design the way it is. But if you, again, I don't subscribe to this concept that we evolved from apes and it took billions of years to get to where we're at as humans.
Yeah, I saw a
But
conversation with you talking about a guy, and that kind of devolved into shouting or him laughing, and I don't, whatever. I guess I sorry, I
but
didn't mean to cut you off.
to answer your question though, what that looks like is men are leaders, women nurture the young. I mean,
And this
I
is
could
that's women
there's
can't.
more than that. There's obviously
Okay.
more. It's not that the only role for women is to nurture young and then their life is meaningless after. I'm just saying that these are roles where it should be expected of the man to pursue, to court, to provide, to protect, and it should be, and most even feminists agree and would want the man to provide and protect and to fit into that traditional role. But what's been happening is our society is kind of infantilized women to where they can do and say whatever they want, and they don't have to fit into a role. They can expect, kind of like a spoiled child, anything they want, and they can have a man do all the traditional roles without having to fit into those roles herself. Now, with all of that being said, and I want to get more into it, and we will, I wanted to I wanted to understand, and I guess it relates because you said this underpins your economic view. Would you consider yourself to be a socialist, a democratic socialist, a communist, a Marxist of any sort?
Yeah, so my understanding of Marxism is that Marxism simply means a critique of capitalism. It's looking at capitalism as a system, and it says there's some flaws here that um, are exacerbated by some levels of human nature that inevitably lead to concentration of wealth, those that take advantage of workers, disregard of environmental fact, and we see it playing out in capitalism. If a company can get away with dumping something in a river and just pay a fine, they'll do it unless there's regulation against it, right? So in my view, we can do better, I guess, is my point. We live in a time with such wealth and income disparity that we have people who never have to worry about providing anything for themselves ever again. And there's folks literally starving in the United States of America, children. And there's veterans living on our streets. That's, to me, is a deeply immoral society when we have that happening. And I think that we are smart human beings, can problem solve, and we have tools available to us. Our system of government and democracy and representatives. I mean, there's so many things that we can put into place, but I think our governments, our institutions have been hijacked by corporate interests and the elite to serve themselves and just themselves. And I think that's what's led us to all of the, if not all the problems we have today, to be
Okay,
honest.
so those are issues that I hear you describing, and I don't disagree that poverty is an issue. Obviously, I don't.
Is it immoral? Is poverty immoral?
Is it immoral? It's just a factor of life. Some people are going to not have as much money as other people. I wouldn't say that having less money is immoral, and I wouldn't say having more money is immoral. You think having more money is immoral?
I think it's immoral when we choose to deprive humans of the basics of life when there's those that have more than they'll ever need. Yeah.
Okay, but
I
I
think it's
hear
a moral
you.
failing of society. And
But
yeah,
okay, but if you're saying that, then I align yourself with Marxism because that's more so just a critique of capitalism. But when we see Marxism have historically carried out itself, that ideology in the Soviet
where?
Union and Mao Zedong's China,
Well, human beings are a factor in all these things, right? So to
but it's the
separate,
ideology that was used. I mean,
no, I think
when
authoritarianism is something that we as humans are subject to and fall into. I think when humans gain the reins of power, they do so in service of themselves a lot of times, and I think that's just a kind of a fact that we have to live with about the nature of human nature sometimes. And so that's why it's a matter of setting up rules within society that safeguards against those types of things.
isn't that authoritarian though? Because you have to enforce Marxism.
Well, we have a system of government that's a representative democracy. The goal of that, hopefully, is to create a society that is more equitable and just across the system, that, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that our country was supposedly founded on for all of us. And it seems as if it's only available to a small sliver of folks, and an increasingly smaller sliver of folks. I mean, you
I
look
hear
at,
you using
yeah,
this term equitable though, not equal, but equitable.
yeah.
What's the difference between equal and equitable?
I think it's again looking at the historical factors that's led us to today. I think about when slavery was ended in the United States of America. We were Slaves were promised, 40 acres and a mule or whatever, right, as a means of making whole. No slave ever got that, right? I mean, there's historical inequities that I think we should be conscious of in order to strive for a more equitable world. Fair?
I well, I'm hearing you describe kind of the historical context to why you may support equity, but what is a definitional difference, if you will, so I can understand why you're not advocating for equality, you're advocating for equity. Because I would advocate, for example, that regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity or religion in the United States, you should have the same legal benefits as everyone else so that we all play by the same rules. But you're not saying equality, you're saying equity. So that seems like this is you're advocating for something else outside of giving an equal legal playing field to everyone.
I think it's about a starting point, right? You'd admit that there's a difference between um, the opportunity someone has if they're born into wealth or just a wealthy community compared to someone who's born into poverty, right? There's starting from different places, right?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So in my view, we should strive for allowing, I guess, bringing down the barriers so that people don't have to start from a deficit. And so I guess policy wise, if getting into specific policies I support, I believe, and I think this underpins, and it contradicts maybe a little bit the right, and I mean that generally, and we can get into this conversation too, but the desire for, in pursuit of sanctity of life. I think that without being conscious of the material conditions folks live within in our real world, um, we, we need to be conscious of those things. And the fact that we don't guarantee healthcare as just a right within our country when pretty much every other developed nation in the world guarantees healthcare, education, paid family leave. I mean, other countries have these things baked into. You're a citizen, you're even just a visitor to our country. If you have a baby, you can stay home with that baby to provide for that baby and make sure and form that bond in those crucial moments when life first starts. But in the United States, nowhere to be found, and no one is really even talking about it. And I think that's a crime. And when I hear folks talk about, you had your last guest talked about this, the sanctity of life, and it wasn't until like 30 something minutes in that y'all talked about the material conditions folks are facing, and it was bait. I think you guys warned about taking the bait when a leftist brings up social programs to benefit families, and I see. I don't know. I see a hypocrisy in that, I guess. And I know hypocrisy is something, it's a human nature. Again, it's one of those things that exists in all of us. It's not exclusive to the right or the left, but I see that as blatant hypocrisy of the right when there's opportunity to honor the sanctity of life. And that's not even on the radar. It's forced birth rather than it is preserving life.
Yeah, that podcast, for anyone listening, if you haven't given it a listen, was about abortion. And what the context of what we were saying is, if I remember correctly, we don't think that poverty is a reason to kill someone. So if you're a poor mother, poor soon to be mother that's pregnant, and you don't have, you're in an unfortunate financial situation, this is not justification to now murder your baby. It wouldn't be justification before birth, and it wouldn't be justification after birth, because we view human life valuable at the point of conception. Now, I don't want to go on a 20-minute debate about abortion, but
I'd rather not.
yes, it is bait, because at least the way we see it, it is bait, because there's a million babies aborted a year, and 97% or so of those are elective abortions, meaning it's a healthy pregnancy and it's just an irresponsible adult in most cases. In other cases, it's maybe less to do with irresponsibility. Maybe something extreme happened financially. Maybe something extreme happened within their family. But in no circumstance is it justifiable to murder an innocent human life. So I would push back on what you're saying there, that there's some kind of hypocrisy. Because I've heard another, and I'll tie it up here. I've heard a lot of liberals that I've debated against tell me that, well, then I should be like anti the Second Amendment. I should be, if I advocate for pro life, then what about children that get murdered? Look, I'm using TikTok language. What about children that get murdered in school? And that's evil and it's awful. But the reality is, a lot of people in our society have firearms. So am I going to prevent upstanding citizen, a father that wants to protect his family, from getting a firearm? No. Does that make me a hypocrite because I'm pro-life, you advocated for pro-birth? Yeah, I'm pro-birth. Of course I am, because that's an innocent human life. I'm not pro-baby murder.
Okay, so forced birth without forced protection and like support of that birth, I think it's irresponsible. I think so. 73% of women who get abortions cite not being able to afford the child as the reason. You just kind of alluded to, yeah, poverty being, a major driver of that decision. Among women below the poverty line, it's 81%. All right. There's this study from Stanford that showed when we cut family planning funding abroad in other countries, abortions went up 40%, right? And so data pretty consistently shows that economic support for things like contraception access reduces abortions. So if our goal is to genuinely drive fewer abortions, not just fewer legal abortions, shouldn't poverty reduction be a centerpiece of the pro-life platform?
Okay. So this will bring it back to our economic views here, because
Yeah.
I don't want it to go all the way into abortion. Of course, I want there to be everyone to have a better economic standing. Um, but
It's
how do
leading to
we
more
bring?
abortions, though, right? Poverty leads
Well,
to more
let's
abortions.
I whether someone has $0 in their bank account, if they're $10,000 in debt, or they have $1 million in their bank account, your financial situation is never a justifiable means to murder a baby. Never. So if she can't take care of it, well, then you do have adoption. And I know that that's less than ideal, but a baby that's alive is better than a baby that was murdered. At least this baby has a chance to live.
Hey, okay, fair enough. I'm curious then, and we can move on to other things too. But I really would love to understand what creating a culture of life means to you, besides forcing women to carry, pregnancies to term.
If it was men that got pregnant, I would be wanting to force men to carry. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're a female or that I have some prejudice against women. They just are the means in which life is carried on earth. So if it was men, I would be advocating for the same thing. If we were like seahorses and men were the ones that had to basically, carry this baby. Seahorses are kind of like an anomaly here, where the male is sort of pregnant with the baby. But my point is, if we were the ones that were pregnant, then I'd be advocating for the same thing, because human life is valuable and deserving to be protected. So I just don't agree with this notion that, oh, I'm like forcing women to do this. Well, there's nothing else that I'm forcing women to do. If she wants to get her tubes tied at 19 years old and never get pregnant, go ahead. You have the means to do it.
You don't
You
think
have the
she would
free will to
face
do it.
like immense criticism for making that decision for herself? Don't you
She
think?
may, but I'm telling you, you're talking with me, and I'm telling you that I don't want to control what anyone does with their own body. The only exception to that is when you're interfering and ending the life of another body, because it's a unique genetic code at the point of conception. So it is its own unique life, biologically. There's studies that back this. There's like a study where close to 6,000 biologists, and they're not Christian biologists. They're just most secular biologists, 97% consensus that human life begins at the point of conception. So that's when I believe human life is valuable, and that's why I'm pro-life. But anyway, to the economic view. So you are describing that abortion is one of the many issues because of people's financial situations. You've pointed at healthcare being another issue in our society, a critique of capitalism, if you will. So, okay, I hear that you're saying that these are issues within our capitalist society. And I want to extend an olive branch right before I ask you my question. I do agree that there should be some level of regulation. I don't think that you should be able to dump whatever toxic chemicals into our oceans. I think there should be some small level of bureaucracy and regulation. I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist by definition because I do believe in some level of regulation. And I think that's the purpose, one of the purposes of government. Keep our society safe, keep our sovereign nation secure, and keep our people healthy as best they can, and keep the people educated. A educated, healthy populace is better than an unhealthy, uneducated populace.
Do you think we're
Now,
doing a
but
good
how do we
job?
come about those? I think that our education system could improve. I think there's a number of things that can improve. I don't disagree with you there, but Marxism being the means in which the vehicle in which we're going to see this improvement, I just struggle to understand. Like, are
Well,
you
hold
an
on. Let
AOC
me.
supporter, like a democratic socialist? Do you think that someone like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, with their ideology, Mamdani in New York, do you think that those policies would be better for America? Is
Look
that more
again. I
so where
guess.
you align?
Yeah. I guess what I want to make sure I'm pointing out, like Marxism is simply a critique of the system that we have. It's not a full sale replacement of everything changes, right? It's an assessment of how the system we live within works and acknowledgement of the failings of it.
It's
That's
more than
Marxism.
that, though. I mean, it is more than that. Karl Marx called for a revolution of the proletariat against the
He
bourgeoisie, the
projected
business
kind
owning
of a
class.
future he projected kind of the future state, acknowledging that there's going to be at some point the fact that there will be resistance to the masses being seen as cogs within a machine to serve those at the top, and the inevitable evolution is more equity across the system, worker ownership of the means of production, right? I mean, that's the boogeyman that I think a lot of folks point to and say Marxism is the same thing as socialism, is the same thing as communism, is the same thing as authoritarianism, and it's all bad. And I would love to inject into this conversation that it's more nuanced than that. And that if we can, again, separate ourselves from the systems that exist and not take a critique of capitalism as a critique of us individually and just acknowledge that we exist within this system, I think we can have really productive conversations.
Well,
Yeah,
you can critique capitalism all you want. But to say that Marxism is simply a lens in which is to critique capitalism, I would not agree with that perspective whatsoever.
that's kind of what
Marxism is
it
a
is.
lot more than you can critique capitalism. Anyone can critique capitalism. That doesn't just because someone's critiquing capitalism doesn't make them a Marxist. Uh, what makes someone a Marxist is subscribing to Marxist policies,
What
Marxist
are those?
economic. Sorry.
What are those?
Well, you named one, like collective ownership over a company, for example. That's more definitionally socialist, where you take the means of production from the hands of the bourgeoisie, and then you give which is the business owner, and then you give collective ownership, forced collective ownership, not volunteer collective ownership, to the employees of the company. So they now have equity with, let's take for example Apple with its many facilities and its manufacturing capabilities. The employees are no longer just getting a wage. They are now having collective ownership over the supply chain. They have collective ownership over the building that they work in. They have collective ownership over the IP of Apple. They are now owners of Apple. But how do you even divvy up the percent stake ownership of these different employees?
Yeah, I think again we're jumping to the straw man of what we're talking about here. Do you think co-ops are a good thing? Do you think in
Um,
generally when workers do have ownership over the work they're doing and over the benefit of that work, is that positive?
if it's volunteer, then yes. If it's a voluntary
Voluntary.
decision, yeah, if it's a voluntary decision, then sure. If you want to start a co-op, which is a type of business that you can start in the United States, and you want to give collective ownership and divvy up the percent equity voluntarily, then sure, that I don't have an issue with that per se. But if you're going to advocate for a system in which the government forces upon business owners to divvy up percent equity to their employees, and that there's now collective ownership. The problem that I have with that is a lot of businesses fail. And if the business goes belly up, the person that took the risk has to incur all of the negatives that come with the business failing. The
See
employees just
that
have to find a different job.
that's not the case though. Like look at the 2008 financial crisis. Like who got bailed out? Like when you look at historical events, the capital owners, the capitalists, they it's socialism for the system we have is socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for everyone else is what we have. It is privatizing gains and socializing losses is what
But
we have.
9 out of 10 businesses fail. Okay, so
Well, I'm
let's
not saying
take
every single business. I'm
let's
talking about. I mean, there's a level of corporate control over our government and our systems that is beyond the small business down the street.
okay, but
Right?
pause,
There's
pause.
definitely a difference
Let's
between these
let's
two.
put this pragmatic, because I want to be specific here. If someone has an idea to start a toilet paper company and they want to start manufacturing toilet paper and paper goods in general, toilet
Yep.
paper, uh,
Paper
printing
towels.
paper, whatever it is, they want to start paper towels, whatever it is, they want to start a paper manufacturing company, and they have to hire 50 employees to manage the different machinery, etc. If that company goes belly up in a socialist society, do those workers now have to also pay, since they had percent ownership, do they now have to pay investors that lost money and the debt? Or like, how are you going to divvy all of that up?
I think we're having a. It's kind of a weird conversation, RC. I got to admit,
But
like
it's pragmatic. This is the real world. That's what will happen.
it's okay. Okay, let me ask this. I guess I'm what I'm suggesting is not there's worker takeover of every single business and every single industry. That's not what I'm suggesting. I don't think that's a lot of what socialists will suggest. I think there are some things, some elements of service and product in our society that should not be driven by profit maximization. Healthcare,
Why not?
education, because outcomes are very poor. Companies optimize for profit rather than delivery of value and care.
Okay. All right. So wait. So hold on. This is what
What's the
socialists
incentive?
advocate for, though. That is what socialism is defined as: collective ownership of the workers
Yeah, I
and the
guess when you
getting
use
rid of
it
the
as
bourgeoisie.
the and that's I hear this a lot when we're lumping it all into one thing, and it's not pragmatic. What's pragmatic to me, I guess, is looking at industries that have a profit incentive and horrendous outcomes. I mean, we have one of the highest infant mortality rates in the developed world in the United States. We have, I mean, our poverty rates. I mean, homeless veterans. I mean, there's just so many problems that we have when we can recenter our, I don't know, just understanding of what the point of all of this is, less around profit and more around human good. I think better things happen. There's better outcomes. I worked in advertising and had a health insurance brand as my client. And I know a lot of folks, but my personal view is we should nationalize health insurance in this country. I'm not saying every single hospital is government run now, but health insurance, we're all part of one pool. There is no private health insurance company denying claims or raising rates. We're paying a mafia middleman essentially to get access to care, and it's up to their discretion whether or not we get that care. When other countries have figured this out, health insurance works because you have risk pools, right? If everyone's part of the pool, you've spread out the risk to everyone. That means you can bring costs down for everyone. But instead, we've made it this cutthroat capitalistic system that forces people either one to be a slave to a job that they hate or maybe potentially hate and can't leave because they'll lose their health insurance, or they just don't have health insurance. It's a brutal system, and if we don't wake up to and push back on the systems that exist, I think again we're stuck down here in the mud.
Let me
Fighting
ask
with
you
each
though,
other.
do you think that, talking about pushback to the system, do you think what Luigi Mangione did by assassinating the United Healthcare
Yeah,
CEO is the
well,
kind of pushback that is necessary?
that is. I'm not going to justify murder. I'm not going to justify violence of any sort. I am not a violent person. To me, it's a symptom of a sick system. Is that fair to say? Something drove
I
someone
don't
to
think
murder
so.
a
No,
man. No, how many people die
no.
because they just don't have access to care in this country? How many
Well,
people are cutting their medications in half because they can't afford the care they need and the treatments that they need? Is that not brutality? Is that not murder?
I think the way you're characterizing it is, I don't think that in reality, if you need care, no one is, if you're dying, like, you're not going to be denied care.
No, that's not true. If you get shot and you go to an emergency room, they'll have to treat you, right? But if I'm slowly decaying from a cancer diagnosis and I don't have insurance, you are screwed. You're screwed. And this is the only country that has as much wealth that's ever existed that enforces that brutality on people.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of that, so I'm not going to just push back for the sake of pushing back. But I do know that there are government programs that, I mean, what happened to Obamacare? You know, that I thought this was something that the left championed, and was it unsuccessful? You know, what about Medicaid and Medicare? These are government programs to help the, financially un, uh, lower class. And I don't mean that
Medi-
in a derogatory way. I'm just saying people that are
Medicare
more
is
financially
Medicare.
destitute.
Medicare is health insurance for seniors.
Yeah, Medicaid.
Medicaid is for lower income, and I think 1 in 4
But
children are
that's what
on
I'm saying
Medicaid or
though.
something.
Medicare, yes, is for more of the elderly.
Yeah,
Medicaid is kind of more for everyone. But my point is that there are government programs that do assist and do take effect if you're someone decaying. I don't like to use that word, but if someone's dying of a disease, they have means in which to get help. It's not that this country is so Medicare, Medicaid, they, like, what do you mean no?
why do you think we had Obamacare? Why do you think Obamacare came into existence?
I think it was a political tool to help him get more votes, honestly. I mean, it
Do you
was obvious
know?
it was a disaster.
I don't disagree. I think it helped tens of millions of people get insurance, but it didn't go nearly far enough. Do you know the origins of Obamacare? Like where that actual legislation came from?
No, I was too young, honestly.
Fair enough. It's a Heritage Foundation plan. The Heritage Foundation, being a right wing think tank, came up with the concept of Obamacare because
I
what
have
it
to look that
is.
up.
Hey,
I
folks
don't
can
it's you're selling me on it was a right-wing think tank that came up with a socialist policy.
but that's the thing, man. Look at it a little bit differently. It forced individuals to buy health insurance from private companies, or there's not even a public option. There's not even the government's going to offer an option of health insurance. It forced us into private health insurance companies. All the plans out there you can buy on the marketplace are either they're all through private health insurance. So there's no socializing here. It was honestly it's a ploy to get people to spend more with private health insurance. My take is that we should abolish private health insurance. We should, and people are going to get freaked out about that. Maybe not abolish it. Maybe offer it as if you want this premium Cadillac thing where you can have access to a doctor whenever you want. Sure, but to provide a standard that is, if you're sick, you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay for it. In a just moral society, I think with as much wealth as we have, I think it's it's wrong to not. And
But that's why
that's
we have
yeah.
Medicaid and Medicare. I don't understand how that's not,
It's not it doesn't go far enough.
accomplishing,
It doesn't go
doesn't
far
go
enough.
far enough.
There's
Okay.
there's still there's still tens of millions of people that don't I don't have health insurance right now. If something happens to me, I'm going to pay out the ass for health for something that, I lost my job last year. I'm starting a few different businesses. I don't have health insurance right now. If I get hit by a car, they'll treat me, but then I'm going to get stuck with a huge ass bill when I leave. And that could the burden to my life for the rest of my life. This is happening. This is happening in our country. And I think
Okay.
that's immoral.
Yeah, I don't think that you're irrational in arriving at some of, these observations. I
I
don't think you're
appreciate that.
crazy for noticing that there are um, problems in our society, because we're not a perfect society. No society is. I just, and I want to move on to a different topic here, but I
Let's do
just
it.
do not believe that Marxism is the solution at all. We've seen Marxism played out, and you could argue, well, that's not the kind of Marxism that you would want. But the reality is, it failed under Joseph Stalin, it failed under Mao Zedong, and it failed under Fidel Castro, it failed under Hugo Chavez.
Look, man, my take is we're the greatest country in the world, supposedly, right? Why can other countries offer private health insurance, or I'm sorry, public health insurance to their citizens, and we can't? I think we're great. Why
Well,
can't we be
one
as
big
good as those other
difference
countries?
one big difference is population size, for one, and I'm not saying that's the only reason. They have a fundamentally different government system than we have. The taxes in some of those countries, like in the Scandinavian area, are astronomically higher than they are here.
The quality of life is
So
incredible, is a lot higher.
the
I would
quality
pay
of
more
life is a lot
taxes
higher.
here.
So why do most people in the world want to come to the United States? We have the heaviest amount of foot traffic. People literally risk their lives to come here. They're not, I'm sure, yes, some people obviously immigrate over to the Scandinavian countries, but these are a lot of talking points. But foot traffic speaks a lot more to me and what people actually want, which is this country, which speaks volumes more than, all right, on paper, these countries by this study and this article says that they have a higher happiness index or whatever. But, you know, where do you live?
Uh, sure. I was born in the United States. I live here. I think of myself as someone who yeah, can criticize this country, and that makes me patriotic. I think that's the foundation of who we are, is that we can strive to be better, and we can point at things that bother us and have debates about it and demand more. I think it's
Okay.
as good a time as ever to live in this world if you have the means to do it. And I think we are more and more slowly, maybe not even slowly, it's probably growing how much we're pricing people, regular humans, out of the necessities of life. Like I mentioned, I worked in advertising. From a marketer's perspective, if we're continually shrinking our audience of who we can sell product to by nature of the gap between the ultra wealthy and everyone else, the middle class shrinking, we're it's unsustainable. My view is that, again, I guess I'll relate it to this. Marxism, I think, is too often used as a boogeyman to point at and say it's failed and be scared of it. And it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing here. My view is that, again, it's a critique of capitalism. My critique of capitalism is that there are figures that have doubled down on what they think capitalism should be. Do you know who Milton Friedman is by chance?
Yeah.
Um, his shareholder theory of value is the idea that the purpose of a corporation exists. The purpose of it is to maximize shareholder profit. I think that is so damaging. If you follow that path to where we are today, there's a global study that is done every year by this PR firm Edelman that does a trust barometer, is what they call it. And they conduct a global survey across tons of different countries, understanding the level of trust that individuals have in institutions, government, media, business, NGOs. And over the last several decades since this study was found or started, trust has cratered to the point of grievance in 2025 is the word they use to describe where we are as a world in trust. And it's deteriorated further into the phrase they're used, like pointing to this year, it just came out a couple weeks ago, is insularity. And that's why, again, I appreciate this conversation breaking down some of these barriers. And I'm hoping that folks who are regular listeners of yours are listening with open-mindedness and some empathy, because that insularity is a result of, I think, a dehumanization of humans. I think we're reduced down to one single attribute, and that's consumption as a consumer. I think when we think of employees in our broader sense, a lot of organizations, to a lot of people, employees are just costs on a line item, and that the point of the business is to maximize profit. My view is that the point of a business is to create value. And I think that's to counter my Marxist view. As someone who works in business, as someone who's trying to get some business off the ground, I see the value, right? And I understand that if we're here to, the opportunity is to solve problems, to make life better for people. But if the point of it is to maximize profit, you're going to find perverse incentives.
Okay,
And
so
I think,
let me
yeah,
quickly respond to that then, and then I want to move to some social differences,
sure.
social policy differences. All right, so as you mentioned earlier, you can start a co-op, and a co-op is kind of, I mean, you're giving collective ownership to the employees. And I bet you would argue that from a worker's standpoint, working at a co-op would be better since you have ownership over that company than working at an S corp or a, you know, a more, there's a few different kinds of corporations, but I'm just saying that you would probably argue from a worker standpoint it is more incentivized for them to want to work at a co-op. You can start a co-op. Hold on. So since we can start co-ops in the United States, why not just start making a co-op mirroring other companies? Make a co-op version of Walmart, make a co-op version of Amazon, make a co-op version of Apple. And if you can market it that well as a worker, you have ownership over this now co-op version of Apple or whatever that you're mirroring, and prove that socialism is better. Prove it. I mean, you have the mean, not you specifically only, but I'm just saying socialists have the means in which they can start these socialist type of companies. And then if it's better actually for the workers, then you have all the leverage because all the workers are going to want to go to your co-op and they're going to leave whatever company they're currently working at and go move over and want to be employed by your co-op.
What do you think of unions?
Well, that's kind of like a separate point, kind of related, but more so like, what do you think of what I just said though? Because you can have like a socialist company, right? Yeah, and
Yeah,
it has the DNA of socialism, and it goes to
yeah,
it should be able to incentivize all these workers to want to work at your co-op. So why not do that? Why doesn't AOC, instead of campaigning of how many trillions of dollars that she wants to spend of American taxpayer dollars to fight climate change, why doesn't she, put her money where her mouth is and start a co-op? Show that socialism is superior to capitalism. Instead of just critiquing
yeah,
it, show it.
yeah. Hey, it's a fair question, and that's where the individual responsibility opportunities exist. And I think to your point, that's why folks do come to the United States, is because there's that perception of I can do anything I want to here. There's that perception of it. When that butts up against reality, are you suggesting someone can start a retail business that can rival Amazon just like
Uh,
out of
No, it's
nowhere?
not going to happen overnight. But my point is, it's going to be a slow burn. It's not going to be, you're not going to build Rome in one day. But if you're advocating for a socialist society and a socialist economic policy, and you think that that's superior to capitalism, well, you can start a co op, which has all the DNA and all the ingredients of socialism. And if it's better for the workers, then they're all going to start migrating to these co-op companies. You could start with an ice cream shop, and then you could build up to a small manufacturing plant, and you could build up, eventually you get to that and you just start making all these co-op companies. Anyway, I wanted to move to some social differences. You
Sure.
had messaged me, from our last podcast to this one. So, I wanted to bring up whatever our differences are about the LGBT community, specifically maybe the trans community. That's where I get most of like death threats about. But if there's, I'll start there. But you were asking me about like the woman versus bear thing, and then there were some
Yeah.
other videos that you sent. So I want to address those. If you would still like to, you could ask me about them. But first, I want to start with, I do think that we probably don't agree about like the definition of man and woman, maybe, or maybe we do. Like, I think that a man can only be a male and a woman can only be a female, and I'm specifically an adult male and an adult female. Because I get a lot of pushback on that. I've been in a numerous amount of debates about it, and they say that gender and sex are different. And I say, no, they're correlated. They have to be correlated. So anyway, I'll stop there. Like, what do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
I've been thinking a lot about what masculinity means. I guess I'm not too caught up in the genitalia of an individual as much as I am understanding how that individual represents themselves and advocates for I don't know, empathy, understanding, general humanity. When I think about masculinity, because I don't think about what a male is, because again, I don't think people are defined by what's between their legs. I think I think being a man is not being threatened by someone else's existence. I think it's being secure enough to say, I might be wrong about this. I think it is about protecting people, not just people who look like you or believe what you believe or belong to you, like a my woman type of thing. I think it's about actually protecting people. Um, and to my point, including against and from the systems that brutalize them. And when I look and think about the trans community, these are some of the bravest people I think that exist, to look at the systems that exist that we live within and reject them because they're harming us. I think patriarchy is harmful to all of us, and I think defending it is harmful. Um, I think that patriarchy tells boys that they can't be full humans, is my perception of what patriarchy is. I think it forces us to remove our emotions, and to tell us that vulnerability is weakness. Um, my view of masculinity is someone that can recognize that those forces exist and be comfortable with themselves despite it.
Okay,
And
all right. Wait, so let's pause there. So you can be a masculine woman, you can be a feminine man. So there's more aspects to how do we define man and woman. Um,
but why though?
but
Why do we need to get caught up in genitalia? I don't understand it. Help me understand why.
do you have a pet?
Yeah, sure.
Is it a dog?
It's a dog.
Is it a boy or girl?
It's a girl.
How do you know? Because of the genitalia. That's my point.
Sure.
That's, of course, we have to look at the genitalia.
Well, we
And you said
have
it's
to
a
look at
girl.
the
You didn't say
genitalia.
it's.
We
We
have
have
to
to.
look at the
Well, it's
genitalia.
we. Yes. How do you think that nurses tell the expecting mother and father what gender their baby is?
Why does it matter?
It matters because that's reality. I mean, it's. What do you mean? Why does it matter?
It
Language is a
feels like
tool,
it
and
feels like
in
we're
order to have effective communication, we have to have definitions to our terms.
it feels like we are putting people in a box. It feels like we're saying you're a man because you've checked these things, and if you fall out of it, you're a freak or you're a whatever. And I think that doesn't really make any sense. I think we're humans. I think we're all in this together, and that pointing out the differences and being so hell bent on, oh man, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't
Okay,
think
look,
we have to look
let
at
me
the
try to
genitalia.
extend some kind of olive branch here.
Yeah.
Do I think that someone should go and call someone a freak if they're living in a way that doesn't match their lifestyle, even if that means tattooing their eyeballs? Some people do that, tattooing their face, or getting body modifications of any sort. Should you call that person a freak? No, I don't think we should be bullying people. And that, applies to the trans community. If you're over the age of 18 and you want to get some kind of hormone treatment, if you want to make body modifications to make yourself feel better, if that really is what you believe makes you feel better, then live your life in accordance with that. You're an
Fair enough.
adult, do it. But do not tell me that I have to affirm their belief system. Let me give you an analogy here. Um, I'm not a Muslim, okay, but if someone tells me I believe that Prophet Muhammad is the truth and that Allah is God, I can do two things simultaneously. I can reject that premise, not accept it, not believe it, but also respect their self identity. Similarly, with a trans person, I can reject that a male can be a woman. I can reject this person's pronouns of she, her, but simultaneously respect their self identity.
Do you think people respect the self identities of trans people
I think
generally, broadly?
some people don't, obviously. There's been times where I didn't. No, there's definitely been times where I'm in a debate and people are insulting me, and I react and I say things that are less than favorable, more so just to try to get under the skin that I'm of the person that insulted me. But in my day-to-day life, if I'm at a grocery store, I was the other day I was at, I don't remember if it was a grocery store. I was in some store and the person clearly was trans. It was clearly like a trans woman, so it was a male presenting as a woman, and they had the pronouns on their lanyard or whatever. I didn't stick my finger in their face and say, I'm not going to call you she, her, and I'm not. But if push came to shove, and if this person said, I am not a man, I'm a woman, and I want you to refer to me as she, her, if I'm in a dinner setting with friends or in that setting where I'm buying something, I'm not going to lie to them and I'm not going to lie to myself. But I'm also not going to go out of my way to make that person feel bad either, you know? So it's just when push comes to shove, if I'm with friends and we're having dinner and one of their friends that they brought happens to be trans, whether a trans man or a trans woman, I will refer to that person by their name. I'm not going to try and provoke them by calling them the pronouns they don't want to be called. But if they said, no, I want you to call me these pronouns, I'm going to say no, because I don't believe it. And if you're really going to ask me my opinion, no, I don't believe that you're a woman or whatever, a man. I do believe that, but I'm not going to go out of my way. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to provoke them.
You think just someone asking or saying these are my pronouns, you're being provoked, or you're being like that's affecting you somehow? If someone
No,
just says
that's
these are
not
my
what I said. I
pronouns?
said I'm not going out of my way to provoke them. But if they are noticing that I'm not calling them she, her, and I'm only referring to them by their name, I'm trying to be respectful. Even their preferred name. If his name is Julia and he presents himself to be a woman, I'm not going to say you're a man and I'm going to refer to your dead name. I'll say, okay, Julia, that's fine. I will refer to this person by their name, but no past that. I'm not going past that and saying, yes, I affirm that you are a woman and I affirm your pronouns are she, her. I'm not going to do that because I would have to be lying to myself and then also lying to them. You see, that's where I'm saying, like, why can't we agree to that? I let these and people on my side let them live their life. But I think we probably disagree with the children too, though. I
There's a
think
level
that
of I guess there's a level of dehumanization and dehumanizing language that as a human, I find I take issue with. I think we all are deserving of respect. I think we all have inherent value, and I think this is also America, or what I thought, and that we could do what we want so long as it's not harming other people. And
But
I'm
what
not
about anything that
threatened
I said
by
though is harmful? Is there anything that you heard me say in the way that I will approach the trans community that seemed harmful to you?
so you think discrimination against the trans community, is that not just that's not an issue, like language around refusing to acknowledge the humanity of trans people, like that's good for them, or that's indifferent to them?
From what I said, did it seem like I'm dehumanizing them?
I do think that it's dehumanizing. Yeah, I think it's not
Some what
validating
is it that
someone's
I
existence.
said that seemed dehumanizing?
I don't think it validates their existence. I think we're looking at a human being and telling them they're less than because they don't fit in the box that we want them to fit in, because it makes us uncomfortable to see them reject the box.
But Brian, I've been a part of a lot of debates and I've watched a lot of trans debates, a lot in preparation for debates and in the debates myself. I've listened to the arguments explaining why and how a male can be a woman. I've listened to hours and hours and hours of this. I've read the studies that they've presented, and I'm unconvinced. I'm unconvinced of, let me be specific. What I'm unconvinced about is that affirming this gender dysphoria, affirming that a male can be a woman and telling them, yes, you are a woman, that that's the right thing to do. I'm unconvinced. So
So
why am I? So I don't believe that that's the case. It's not that I'm not believing because I'm prideful and I want to hurt them. I've listened to the arguments. I don't believe it. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, and I have to lie to myself too and just buy into this lie that I don't subscribe to. Just like I brought up with the Muslim example in that analogy. I don't believe that Muhammad is the prophet they claim he is. I don't believe Allah the way they believe Allah is God. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is God, but I can respect them. I've listened to their arguments. Does that mean I'm dehumanizing Muslims because I do not subscribe to
it
their
doesn't
worldview?
it just doesn't sound like you respect someone if you refuse to acknowledge their humanity. You know what I mean?
I'm okay. This
Their
I'm how am
identity,
I
right?
there does
Identity is
do
important. Hold on.
do
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a
does
question?
an atheist have to acknowledge and affirm Jesus Christ as God? No, they don't. They can respect that I believe Jesus Christ is God. They don't
Mhm.
have to affirm me of that. They
Can I
don't
ask you?
have to
Yeah.
believe that
Hey,
though. They're
okay.
not
That's
dehumanizing me if they don't
if
respect
they
that.
go out of their way and they talk about how Christians are not really Christians or not really humans or they're not living up to whatever standard that I'm holding them to as an atheist, I think that's dehumanizing.
I
Can I
hear
ask you a
you,
question? Can I
but
ask you a question?
from everything that I said though, and the way yes, you can, but everything that I said, I didn't do that though. I said the opposite. I said I respect that they believe of themselves what they identify as. But I am not going to partake in it if push came to shove. I will refer to them even by their chosen name if they want.
Has push
It could
come
be
to
a
shove
man
often?
plenty of times in debates and in discussions right now. Yes. I mean, there's not many trans people in the country, so it's not like I encounter them all the time, but that even adds to my point. Why are we radically redefining terms for a fraction of a fraction of a fraction percent of our population?
Who's doing that?
They
Who who
do.
who's making that an issue though?
Well, Kamala Harris, for example, when she was campaigning for her presidential run, she went up on the stage and said, "My pronouns are she, her." And that's a nod to the trans community.
It's
It is.
pandering. It's
It is.
pandering.
But that you asked me
It's
who's doing
annoying.
it.
I guess it's pandering. And look, to be clear, you mentioned Obama and Obamacare, bringing up Kamala Harris. I reluctantly vote for the Democratic Party because we can get into the differences between them. I think at their core, both of them are beholden to corporate interests, but there's a difference between them in subtle ways that lead to disproportionate outcomes. Like with implementing Obamacare, it meant 20 something million more people, I think, got access to health insurance. If something happened to them, they could go to see a doctor as opposed to racking up debt. But I'm not a stan for the Democratic Party. I'm a huge critic of it. I don't think I feel represented within our political system because I don't think people are putting to the forefront humanity. I think we're putting capitalism and capital to the forefront of our systems.
Okay, but
And
let's keep it to the trans topic though, because I'm
okay,
really
let me ask you a
struggling to
question.
understand how I'm dehumanizing them with the way I said I'm approaching this subject.
Let me start with the question: are there just male and female?
There's yes, there are only male and female, but sometimes you do have birth defects where you have instead of just XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes, you have like sometimes a little bit of a mix, but
Abnormalities,
you do have
right?
abnormalities, yes.
Sure. And would you say if someone who had both genitalia, could you say which gender they were definitively?
Me, I probably couldn't, but the wait, but hold on, doctors can because you would probably agree that doctors get gender assignment incorrect at birth, right? So, meaning there has to be an objective medical standard to which you can objectively determine someone's sex.
I think in an evolved society, with a lot of rules that are made up, with an empathetic society, with a society of people that want to center humanity as opposed to focus on division, I think that that expression of self is important. And again, I think we like to force people into boxes that are made up and that don't serve us. They don't serve us. I think my expression of masculinity or my manhood is whatever I say it is and
But
whatever
that's
I
your
do it.
personality, though. It's not like I'm telling you your personality makes you less than human because of how you express yourself. And I'm not telling a trans person you're less than human, you're less valuable than I am or non trans people are. But I just don't believe that the way they're expressing themselves is real is grounded in reality. But I'm not going out of my way to tell some random trans person out on the street, I don't think that your expression of self identity is irrational. Who I am talking to are people on TikTok or people hosting a debate saying, I want to have opposition to my pro-trans perspective. And I'm going up saying, okay, well, you're asking, so I'm going to tell you my opinion. You see the difference? Like, I'm not going to people that are unprovoked and telling them, I disagree with your life.
Look,
And I think that you're less
yeah,
than valuable. I don't say that.
I hear you, and you do you. What I'm suggesting is that this disproportionate focus on this issue is causing harm to that community that is intentional. Because to my through line throughout this, there are forces, there are powers that exist that would rather us argue over this than point to the fact that we live in a society that doesn't guarantee health care, that there's homeless veterans living on our streets, that infant mortality rates are higher in this country than in other developed countries. They'd rather us be arguing about this than focusing on the real issues. And by this disproportionate focus, it's causing harm to that community. That is my understanding.
But that community is very
Donald Trump
loud. It's
Donald
not just
Trump
corporations that are, talking about that community. That community voluntarily is very loud. They have an entire month in which they parade on streets to let everyone know their sexuality and their, sexual orientation and their sex identity. It's
You ever
like
been to a
they
pride?
want people to know.
You ever been to a pride parade?
No,
Would you ever go?
no,
Why not?
because that's sinful. I think it's a perversion, total perversion.
What is?
Well, it's one thing if you are, sexually attracted to the same sex. I do. There are people in the church that are attracted to the same sex and choose to remain celibate. I don't think that simply your attraction makes it evil, but I think acting upon it is perverted.
So
I believe that a marriage is
sin is
between a man and a woman.
sin is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I grew up Catholic, and I think it provided a lot of interesting frameworks to view the world. I just don't derive all my morality from religion. I
Okay.
have a humanist view, and it's pretty empathetic. I think last time we talked, I talked about, and I mentioned working in advertising. Curiosity is, I think, something that's really important to me as a person, and with that comes empathy for just different ways of living. And when you combine curiosity with empathy without judgment, I think it unlocks so much richer opportunity for human connection. And I think by just going into any situation thinking that I have this moral superiority because of my religion or faith, I think I don't know, I think it detracts from human connection.
Okay. Well, let's pause there. I don't think I'm superior to them, and it's not my morality. I think that there is an objective moral standard. I do believe that.
That's only
Uh,
derived from religion, though.
I think it's derived from our creator because we have order in this universe, we have order in this life. And I don't think morality is something that evolved, because then what about every other living species on the planet? They grape or they rape. Sorry, I'm again speaking in TikTok language. They have incest. There's many documented cases where they kill their own young. Where, I mean, the list of things. There's pedophilia. I mean, in nature. So is that evil? Is morality only exclusive to humans? Because I believe morality is only exclusive to humans, and I believe God created us different from animals. But if you don't subscribe to that worldview, then we're just another animal. And what's actually wrong on acting off of our instinct? What if our instinct is to do the things that other animals do in nature? What is objectively wrong about that?
I'm not sure I follow. What
I'm
do you mean?
saying that if we all evolved, there's no God, that abiogenesis is true. Abiogenesis being single-celled organisms came from hydrothermal vents deep in the seas. And then from that point, billions of years later, all the life that we have around us spawned basically from that point. that it's all chemically and scientifically explained, and it was absent of a creator. There is no God, there is no intelligent mind. Then we're just one of many other living organisms on the planet. There's nothing objectively wrong with anything we do. We're just acting off of instinct. Chimpanzees will rape each other and beat each other up and murder each other, and
I
there's
mean, there's different
incest and all the.
societies. There's different societies within different,
But what
right?
I'm saying is that there's an objective moral standard, and society, I don't appeal to society for my morality. Let me give you a scenario, because a lot of, with this LGBT subject, because I don't want to get off into like a theology debate, but I want to bring it back here. But let me present you with a hypothetical, and I've asked this in other debates that I've been in. Typically they say that two consenting adults, as long as they're not harming anyone, can be in a romantic relationship. Two men, two women, to trans people, whatever it is, like as long as it's two consenting adults. And then I say, okay, so what about two consenting adult brothers? Can they be in a romantic relationship too? Because they're not harming anyone else. And then they'll instinctively say, no, that's wrong. But why is that actually wrong? Of course, I believe it's wrong, but I'm just saying, if they're not harming anyone else and love is love and they're adults and it's consensual, why should we prevent them based off of those standards that I just set up? Why should you prevent those two consenting adult brothers from getting married? You know what I'm saying? So that's why I believe there's an objective moral standard. And we could say that it's humanistic and it's all subjective, but it's actually not. But what do you think of that? Like, how would you answer that question? Do you think that it's actually wrong and we should make it illegal for two brothers, not a brother and sister because they can procreate, but two brothers that cannot procreate? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
there has
guess
to be lines in the sand drawn.
I think I don't. It's hard to. I don't know. Agree. It's weird. It's weird. I'm not going to advocate for protecting it and for men brothers to celebrate. Like I'm not going to champion that as a cause. I guess there is a difference, in my view, between the law mandating what marriage is and dictating it's between these two people for this purpose, when we supposedly live in a country founded on freedom, right? I mean, I'm not going to bust down the door of someone having intercourse just because I find it morally repulsive. I'm not going to go there, right? They're humans and adults, and there's weird people doing some weird shit right now as we're having this conversation. I look at it from the lens of who controls power. What are the systems that we work within? And the Epstein files, Donald Trump, the cover up of real tangible harm that's being put on real humans. To me, that's where we should focus. Like that's as opposed to a gay couple, your neighbors down the street.
Well, I also want to make something clear. I have a family member that's gay. He's been in a relationship for, I don't know, 20 something years, a long time. And I two things are also true here. One, I don't agree with it. I think it's immoral. But secondly, I don't go out of my way to tell him that.
Just put it on the
it was
internet
about
and
a
talk
little
about
over
it.
it was a little over a year ago. Well, I don't shy away from it. I think it's wrong. But if he were to ask me, I would tell him. But what's the purpose of me? Like, I with my ex-girlfriend, it was a little over a year ago. We were, visiting the state that he resides in, and we had a dinner with him and his partner. And my ex and I are both Christian. And do we agree? No. But did we disrespect? Also, no. Did we go out of our way to tell them you're living a sinful life, et cetera, et cetera? No, we didn't. So like I said, I can respect how someone wants to live their life, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with it or I have to think that it's moral. I don't.
Do you think being gay is a choice?
That's a good question. I think some people do choose it, but for the most part, I think it's more than a choice. I don't know. I'm not. I don't think science is absolutely clear on that.
Do you think you choose to be straight? Is that something you're doing?
Well, No, I don't think that's a choice. I think that's just the way we were designed. But it's a valid question to ask, why do we see homosexuality in humans? Um,
We see it all
it's
over
a
the place. We see it all over the place.
well, yeah, you see rape and incest and murder all over
No,
the
no, no,
place
no,
too in
no.
different
I mean,
species.
no, no. You see partnership, same-sex partnerships, and all kinds of
No,
species.
I thought you meant by all over the place. I thought you meant like in different species.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but
Same-sex.
you
Yeah,
see a bunch
partnership.
of things. I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but just because it's in nature doesn't mean we should replicate it. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think it's kind of a stretch to see two male penguins that may be mistakenly confused, and they have, I don't know. I mean, like I've seen those articles. I would just see the argument because we're going to get nowhere with it. Let's just say that that is homosexuality. Let's say that there is homosexuality found amongst species on of different species, right? Like I'm not going to sure. So what does that say about humans? So there's homosexuality found. Are they choosing to be that? I think it's probably something more biological, like maybe something with their brain makeup and the part of their brain that has attraction. I don't know why they have that. I wouldn't argue that it's 100% a choice though. No.
Okay. Um, and how does it affect you and your humanity or your masculinity if two men are having a consensual relationship? Like, how does that
Okay.
affect you?
I hear you continue to ask this question of how does it affect me and affect people on my side.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is obvious. It doesn't affect me on a day-to-day basis, but
Mhm.
if someone is attracted to children and I don't know who that person is, that's not affecting me either. Simply them being attracted to children, it's disgusting and perverted. But just because it doesn't affect me doesn't mean that I'm still against it. So, what does it not affecting my day to day life? Children starving in Africa doesn't affect me personally on my day to day life. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to give to charitable causes to help those children. So I keep hearing you like repeat this claim that, well, how does it affect me? Well, it doesn't, but there's a lot of things that don't affect me that I still care about.
Sure. I guess you posted a story a couple months ago, and I responded to it about how essentially it was you are what you focus on, right? To that something to that extent.
Yeah.
Um, when I hear these kind of conversations, and there's so much focus on to what you admitted, a tiny percent of the population as it relates to the trans community, and a small percent of the population that exists in the LGBT community broadly, and then not make as much of a fuss about individuals in positions of power exploiting that power, harming children, harming people. It indicates to me what is important to you, and generally, I'm not you because we're having this conversation, but it indicates to me a lot about, I don't know, yeah, what is important. And my personal take is love is love. It exists in all kinds of different forms. There's, friendship, there's passion, there's infatuation, that there's the tinge of love in. There's love between family, family members, friends. There's all kinds of different types of love. And when we try to dictate what is the right kind, um, again, I think we put ourselves in a box that is unnecessary and that prevents us from really truly becoming who we can be. And that to me is an evolved human that again isn't threatened by others folks' expression of who they are.
I don't go out of my way telling these people what I
But how
think.
much time we're talking about it right now, I think is
Hmm.
that's my point. It we could be
But
talking
they're
about the
very
ups and
loud,
downs.
though.
We could
These
be talking
this small
about
minority is very loud, and they push it in the school system. That actually would affect me if I had children. They do push it in the school system. It's legislated in the school system in California and some schools in Georgia, for
what is.
example, and many other states. It's pushed in the public school system, and really the principal reason I'm against that is why does the state get to override the moral decisions of the parents? Why do these conversations need to be had in the classroom? Why don't you just leave that to the parents?
What is being pushed in California specifically? in
There's
schools?
and there they for example, they'll talk about gay people and trans people and normalize it to the children and say, "Well, yeah, these people exist." And but the thing is, it's they try to play it like, "Well, we're just saying they exist." Yeah, but it's more than that because if you're talking about gay and trans, what if the kid doesn't know what that is, which most of the children probably don't know what that is. The child is going to act, "But what does it mean to be gay?" It gets sexual very quick because you're going to have to explain that it's two men loving each other. Well, children love their parents. So is it that kind of love? No, it's not. It's a romantic kind of love.
It's like a
But what
love
does
between
romance
mommy and
mean?
daddy. It's like a love between mommy and daddy. And is that
Yeah,
kid
but
going to be like,
it
oh, yeah, y'all are banging all the time? Like, that's just not how it works. That's just
I
not what,
hear
you
you.
know what I mean?
But leave that to the parents. Why does the state need to tell children about this? Just leave it to the parents. The kids are going to learn about it someday anyway. But here's the thing, they want to desensitize these young children to think it's normal and acceptable to be trans and gay.
I think that it
That's the
is.
purpose.
I think it is.
I know you think it is, and that's fine. You think it is. I don't. And 63% of the United States still claims to be Christian. I don't know how much of that percent are active Christians, but if they truly are Christian, then they don't agree with you. And they have a right to shield their children away from the state trying to influence these children that it's perfectly fine and normal because we
So
don't think it is.
where does Christianity, I guess, I don't know. I know that in the Bible, like there's the translation between there was a there was a change between those. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Bible was written thousands of years ago, but that was hundred, 10 years, 20 years after Jesus was alive, and it was vocal for the first ever, and then it was translated to tons of different languages. Um, I think a Christian would look at, I don't know. Again, I was raised Catholic, and there was some things that were instilled in me with my faith, that I saw the humanity in other people, and I think again, disproportionately spending a lot of time talking about homosexuality and the trans community and focusing all this attention on it is harming humans
Okay, I'll make it
and taking
clear.
their lives.
If your side wants my side to stop focusing on it, then stop pushing it in the school system. Could we if you stop pushing it in the school system, we wouldn't have much to say about it. If it you just left it to 18-year-olds and above to do with their life what they want, then we would mostly just be quiet about it. Like, okay, fine. Fair enough.
I don't I don't believe that, to be honest. I think that acknowledging, um, that humans exist and they come in all different shapes and colors and sizes
It's not just
isn't.
acknowledging they exist. It's more than that. It's
I
telling
don't.
them that it's normal and healthy to be trans. It's normal and healthy to be gay. And it's not. It's
I,
definitionally abnormal. I mean, by definition, it is not normal. And that's not a moral claim. That's not saying good or bad. But I also believe it's bad to act upon sin. I do. But to say it's abnormal is just definitionally true because it's not the majority. Normal is the majority. So, no, I mean, it's more than just saying these people
so, oh,
exist.
hold on. So normal is right-handed. That's
Normal
normal,
is right-handed. Yeah, it's abnormal to be left-handed.
and
It is. I mean, it's not. People think that saying abnormal equals wrong. No, it's just abnormal.
that's what we're talking about.
I
When
think
you
it's
want
both, but
to,
it's abnormal and it's wrong.
yeah, that's
Colloquially
what you're
speaking,
saying.
people usually use normal with good, so that's why I'm using both terms. But they're pushing this idea to children in the school system, not in every public school, but in a lot of public schools, and they're pushing it onto a bunch of children that are raised by Christian parents, and they're telling these Christian children it's good and fine and normal to be trans and gay, and it's not. We don't agree with that, so just
I
leave it out of the school system.
I think there's a bigger push right now for a right wing takeover of school boards to ban books and deprive, knowledge and intelligence from people to keep us ignorant. And I
Well,
think
some
that,
books are not appropriate for children to read, though.
yeah, some books, okay, there's books that are in a library for like a K through 8 school that an eighth grader could go check out. Yeah, that may not be exactly something a kindergartner should look at, right? Sure. But that doesn't mean the schools are taking out these
Or
books and
even an
showing
eighth grader
every
to look
child.
at, to be honest. I mean, just
Why?
because they're in eighth grade doesn't mean it's appropriate for them to see. Like, I don't think that these children should be allowed access to books because eighth grade's still a child, ninth grade's still a child. Like, they shouldn't be allowed access to certain books that are sexually perverted. I don't think so.
So
And
okay,
let me add
let's
on to
be
that a little bit more. I don't think that sex ed in school is appropriate either. I think that you should leave that to the parents. I don't think that an adult in the school system should be talking about the genitalia of my child to my child. Leave that to my mom or to their mom and to their father.
lack of sex education leads to greater unplanned pregnancies, which lead to more abortions.
But hold on. Why does sex ed need to be left to the state? The parents can tell their child about
Are
these
parents doing that?
subjects.
Are parents doing that?
Yeah. I mean, let's look at the amount of unplanned pregnancies from 100 years ago to now. I haven't looked at that to be clear. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I would think raising kids to be Christian, waiting till marriage, understanding what sex is, and also understanding that sex is within the confines of a marriage, that they now have a moral justification to not engage in premarital intercourse, which is what culture really pushes to this sexual liberation. Have sex with whoever you want. Love is love. Pleasure is like the ultimate authority. So who is anyone to tell you just go and have sex? And I think that if we raised every kid to be Christian, they would understand what sex is, but they would also understand that it has a place, and that place is in marriage.
You recognize what you're saying is fundamentally un-American, right?
What about what I said is un-American?
You're presuming that we have a Christian nation, that everyone should be following Christianity, and that everyone should live the life you're telling them they should.
Not by force. We are a nation that's we the people for the people. I want people to voluntarily choose to raise their children this way, just like as it's been for hundreds of years. We were never a theocracy, but the government has to reflect its constituents, its citizens. And if its
Does it?
citizens are all, of course, it's we the people for the people. That's what the republic ideally is supposed to do. So if everyone was atheist and a secular subjectivist, or if they were all Muslim, or if they're all Hindu, or if they're all Jewish, the government in the United States is going to reflect that, because it's we the people for the people. That's why I advocate as many Christians as possible in our country.
But that's
It
not
should be voluntary. I don't want it to be by force, to be clear. That's my position.
okay, because it's the way you talk about it, it's pretty forceful. From my perspective,
Parents
it's
raising their children
no,
Christian.
it's yeah. I mean, yeah, it's advocating for
That's
a
how our
nation
country was
of
founded, though. I
Christians.
mean, societally, we've always been a Christian nation. Societally, we have. And that's where a lot of our laws were influenced from the Bible. That's why gay marriage was not legal until 2015. That's not just because, oh, we hate gay people. It's because, oh, the Bible says it's wrong. That's
I
why
think
a lot of the laws that we've had through hundreds of years of this country, the root of why those laws exist are because of the Bible. The Bible's baked within a lot of the laws we have, in other words.
yeah, I don't disagree with you. When we again, let's talk historical context. The Americas existed as people before settlers came, right? Colonial
Hmm.
settlers came.
Right.
Those colonial settlers, in a lot of instances, were some of the most fanatic religious fundamentalists escaping religious persecution from Europe to explore their religion here in the new America, the new land. Um, I guess I just we're fortunate that we wrote into the rules that we're not going to dictate a religion, and I think by nature of that, we have an incredibly diverse and dynamic country, but that also still serves the benefit of the wealthy, the people who control all of our systems. I keep coming back to the fact that like us arguing here about what, to your point, consenting adults do is such less of an issue to me than power structures existing that traffic children, that exploits vulnerable people. We're letting that slide in this conversation for the sake of over over conversing around a small percentage of the population that, like you and me, are just trying to figure it out and do their best and survive in the systems that they found themselves in.
Okay, so I don't want to ignore that you're bringing up the Epstein files or something and try to make it seem like these two consenting adults that want to be romantic with each other is worse than that. Um, I think sin is sin. Sin is evil. Period. But yeah, whoever's implicated and involved and did anything to these children on that island and elsewhere deserve, if not the death penalty, something close to it. It's hard for me to advocate for the death penalty as a Christian because that's premeditated murder. But my knee jerk reaction is I want these people killed. Whoever did anything to these children, including Trump, if he's implicated, which I don't see that. I think
Really?
that it's yeah, really. I think that if, and I'm not happy about how the Trump administration rolled out these files, but it seems that the contrary is true, that he was informing the FBI to continue to investigate Ghislaine Maxwell, and do I think it's weird that he's pictured with Epstein? Yeah, it's weird, but it
It's not
seems
just
that he
pictured,
kicked him
man.
out of Mar-a-Lago. I
It's not
mean,
just
okay, is
pictured.
the implication is that Trump is a pedophile and he, did inappropriate things with children? I think Trump has done a lot wrong. I don't think that he is a pedophile. Maybe I'm wrong. And if I find out that that's true, then I would want him, just like everyone else that's involved in this, to at very minimum go to prison for life and at maximum receive the death penalty.
Yeah, yeah. I, I,
I'm
I
not
think Mar-
advocating the death penalty or to go to prison for being gay. So you see that personally, I have a much larger issue with anyone perverting children and abusing children sexually. And I think that they should, in an ideal world, probably be killed because that's disgusting. Um, so yeah, I'm not going to defend anyone that's involved in this. But there's millions of these Epstein files. So, just because someone's named in the file, maybe they're named twice because they were working at a company that had to email Epstein, who was a business person, and he had a lot of business associates. Just because someone emailed Epstein doesn't mean that they are a pedophile. So let's make something very clear. But there's a lot of people named in those files that are probably pedophiles or are pedophiles and did inappropriate things.
yeah,
So I
which
want to be, I want that to be as transparent as possible, and I want all those people to, receive the full brunt of the law.
and the Trump administration is covering for them.
See, I hear that, and there are redacted files. Personally, I'd want them all 100% transparent, but not. And I'm not talking about every redaction, but I've heard a perspective about that, and I'm not a big fan of Trump right now for a number of reasons, and I've been a big fan of Trump for 11 years since he announced he's going to run. But to give you a different perspective on that, as I stated, there are a lot of names in those files of people that didn't do anything with children, that were just, kind of an innocent bystander that happened to email Epstein because they are working for a business associate of his. And just because their name is in it, they could lose a lot of credibility. Their life could be ruined because someone on TikTok could see that person's name and then slander them as some kind of pedophile. So that's my point, is that there might be a lot of redaction also to protect victims and innocent people. But again, not every redaction I'm going to justify. I'm just saying that there is another perspective to explain why there are redactions.
Yeah. So for the record, Trump's in the files like millions of times. Trump was best friends with Epstein by like admission by I think Epstein or one of them that they were best friends for 10 years. My personal take is that Mar-a-Lago was a trafficking ground for young women and that Trump's um, beauty pageants were kind of the model for Epstein's operations. That's my take. That's my understanding of it. And again, I guess to like what we focus on is what we are. Um, I think that's abhorrent, and I think he's covering for. I think this is the biggest cover up kind of in our history, and I will not. I will never say anything about Trump may be implicated, but like I think I think he's implicated. I think it's disgusting anyone covering for that or trying to make a claim that he's not implicated. It's obvious. It's obvious.
What's obvious, that he's a pedophile? Is that what you're claiming?
I don't know what Trump
Because
is
yes, he's
exactly.
implicated in the files. He's named in the files, but
Yeah,
because so
I think
so
he's
let's reach a logical conclusion here. What are you
sure.
insinuating? That he's a pedophile?
I think. Well, look, I think power plays a lot of roles here. I don't know if he's attracted to children, but I think there's an element of a system that preserves power that exists. And they demonstrated their power over powerless people. And that's been something that's gone on for decades. And the longer it goes on, the bigger the cover up it is. And I see it being obvious. I see Trump as a con man. I think he saw real pain in this country, wages stagnating, jobs getting outsourced to other countries, real pain in this country. And he said, and the problem is immigrants. The problem is trans people. The problem is the deep state and the liberal elite, as opposed to the powerful, entrenched corporate interests that funded his campaign and that continue to support him and that benefit from his presidency.
Okay, a few things to that though. And again, like I said, my support of Trump is really waning, especially over this war
That's
with
great.
Iran.
That's good to hear.
But I'm still a Christian
keep looking at it.
conservative. But my support is waning not because I'm changing my views. My views and my Christian conservative beliefs are why my support of Trump is waning. And I've been supporting Trump and defending him. I've lost friends over it. I've made videos that have gotten millions of views defending him. Family members were very disappointed with me, 11 years ago when I first said I'm supporting Trump. So my point is that it takes a lot for my support of him to wane. But I'm starting to see, and he's doing things that I don't like. So I'm just stating that. Yeah, but I'm still a Christian conservative. So, some people hear that and think, oh, you're going to vote for a Democrat. No, I think that's, I don't want to, I'll just leave it at that. No, that doesn't mean I'm going to vote for a Democrat at all. And I'm no closer to doing that. Well, but I want to respond, I want to respond though. So does this mean I think he's a pedophile? No, I don't see that. Do I think it's weird that he was hanging around Epstein? In retrospect, of course. In retrospect, yes. But let's understand something too and give context, because we're looking at this in 2020 hindsight, that we know everything we know about Epstein. What about the people that, and I'm talking not about going to the Epstein Island. I mean, Epstein going to Mar-a-Lago, for example, or going to some kind of venue. Epstein was a business person, amongst other disgusting things, obviously, but one of the things he was is a business person. Not everyone knew that he's running a pedophile ring, right?
What was his business?
So hold on. I mean, I think he was involved in like investing of some sort. He was worth, I don't know what, hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know the particulars of the name of his business. It is shady. The whole thing is shady. But what I'm trying to say is, if someone tells me that they're an investor and I'm at some party, and I don't even really go to parties at all ever, but I'm just saying, if I was someone that went to party and drank alcohol or whatever, and I'm at some party,
you should party more.
No, because I'm going to run into people that are like Epstein. So I just, yeah, I hope not. But I'm just saying, let's say the people at this party and they're hanging around Epstein. Of course, we can look in retrospect and be like, oh, how could you? But how were they supposed to know he's running some kind of sick pedophile ring? He's telling them, I'm an investor. I make money doing whatever he makes money doing in the business world. And it's like, okay, maybe he was a likable guy in those moments. Who knows? I don't know this person, but I don't think that just because they're pictured at a party with him, that they're now implicated and we should reach the conclusion that they're a disgusting, child predator. Like, no, they didn't know that.
Do you know who Howard Lutnick is?
I do. He's working for the Trump administration, and I think that's really weird. There was a mask on the Epstein Island that looks like his face. I know it's weird. There are things that
weird. It's more than just weird, though. Is it not more than weird?
Maybe it is more than weird, but we have to see evidence of it. I forgot what's his last name? Lutnick. He laughs when Trump brings up the Epstein thing. I mean, the guy seems like a disgusting pervert. Seems like it. And maybe he very well is.
You know how much he profited from his office being in the World Trade Center and all of the employees that died? Have you heard about that?
Was he the one that owned the Trade Center?
He owned a company that was in
the Trade Center.
He didn't go into the office that day. All of his employees were killed. They sued the airline, got hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever this amount was.
What kind of insurance did he take out? Terrorist insurance or something?
Yeah.
I'm not defending that at all.
And then none of the families were paid out.
Okay,
And
let me
that's a
be
man in
clear.
the
Yeah,
Trump administration. Like
I hear you.
that says something. That means
That
something, does it
what does it
not?
say? Does
This
okay,
man
let's be
has
clear. Yes. Is it weird? Yes. Would I want that guy working with me? No. Do I would like to see that he's working next to Trump? No, I want him kicked out. Simply because he's laughing about the like that alone I don't like to see.
he is
But
one
hold
man
on,
in
but
this.
the
Go ahead.
criticism here is to Trump. So yeah, that guy seems to be disgusting. Do we have quantifiable proof that he is a child predator? Not that I've seen. And I want them to find that proof if it exists and lock that guy up for life or worse. But the criticism here is to Trump. And of the criticisms that I have personally to Trump, I think that Israel has far too much influence in our country. I think Epstein was a perhaps an agent of Israel or the IDF, and that he, was rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful elites in the world to blackmail them. That's a conspiracy theory that I've heard and that it has legs to it. Am I 100% sure that's what it is? No, but that's the one that I lean towards the most. That's the one that seems to make the most sense to me. So, look, man, I'm not trying to defend this. Like I told you, my support of Trump is lower than it's ever been, if it even is there at all. I think this war with Iran was such a spit in the face to all of us that believed in the no new wars. And I think this war with Iran has a lot to do with, if everything, to do with Israel. And Epstein is totally involved in all of this. The Epstein files, all the people implicated in them. I think a lot of webs are tied here.
Yeah, Steve Bannon. I mean, there's so many connections to the Trump
You're
administration.
preaching to the choir on a lot of
Yeah,
this. I'm not
no,
defending it. And I think a
I'm
lot of
glad
it's
we
weird.
agree. I'm glad we agree. I guess that's my point. And I guess to then tie it back to again my broader point. I think we would all be better served if, as individuals, we stop taking critique of the systems that we live within so personally and look at the systems objectively and understand how those affect our lives and look at the individuals who are upholding those systems to their benefit and our detriment. And so
Okay.
I know you're trying to wrap up. I appreciate this conversation because I think this type of thing is important. I'm hoping that a, an open-minded conversation amongst people who clearly disagree on some like pretty fundamental things, because some things you said, I'm like, I don't even know how to respond to that, because like I just don't even see the world that way, right? But the beauty of this country, this experiment that we live in, is that the marketplaces of ideas, right? The best ones will rise, and so my hope is that in engaging in stuff like this, we can let those things rise and find humanity in each other and see each other as not I don't know, bad actors, but people doing their best within the systems that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
I
I
think that we're doing something harder than anything like manosphere doofuses like Andrew Tate are trying to sell men. I think this is the type of thing that is good for men to hash this type of stuff out, as opposed to telling them, hey, you don't have value and you need to prove your value. I think expressing ourselves as individuals, as men, however that comes out, is what is important, and that we should celebrate that, so long as it is, yeah, reflective, healthy, honest, not lashing out, right? The way a lot of men, I think, do in kind of anger and frustration, because that's the one emotion we're kind of allowed to feel like we can feel. But these kind of conversations and engaging in tough dialogue, I think makes us masculine men. And I applaud conversation like this. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. I understand your view. I appreciate it. Um, I just want to, also be clear, because
Yeah.
a lot of people try to misconstrue myself and others on my side, that the reason that, like, my motive for my view on abortion, my view on LGBT, my view on feminism, etc., is because I want to control. Like, I have some kind of, evil intention that I just get off on the power of a woman not being allowed an abortion, and there I'm exercising my control over her, or a LGBT person not being able to live exactly the way they want to live, and therefore, boom, my control has been exercised. This has nothing to do with control. I don't get off on that. I just think that there needs to be structures morally in our society. That's why I brought up the two brothers getting married, because that's one that's very taboo. You very rarely will find someone defending incest, whether it's a brother and a sister or two brothers. My point is that I don't appeal to culture or society as my moral arbiter. I think that's a big mistake. And there's a lot of historical precedents to why that's a mistake. You could look at Nazi Germany. Just because a society at large believes something is right does not make it right. So, I want to be clear. I don't believe in the things I believe because I want to harm and control and demean and dehumanize. I just think that there is a moral standard, and I want someone that's president and the government to reflect more closely to my moral standard. But all I want it to be voluntary. I do not want it to be by force. I don't want to live in a theocracy that's authoritarian. I don't want to live under a dictator. I don't want to live in a monarchy. I think our founding fathers were geniuses. I don't think they were perfect. And I don't think any person is perfect, and a number of them weren't even Christian, right? But I think that the founding documents, the Constitution, was genius. And, it can amend. The part of its genius is that it can mend itself. It's not a fixed document that's, like irreversible.
Yeah, man.
It is reversible.
Yeah, we
So,
have amendments for a reason. Yeah.
right, right. And we can add more.
Overturn Citizens United, passed ranked choice voting, publicly financed campaigns. Let's get money out of politics so that humans can be represented, not special interests represented in that democracy and in that government that those genius founding fathers created. It's been hijacked.
In a similar vein to that,
Yeah.
and probably we will agree here, I'm very against lobbying. I don't think that a wealthy person or an enterprise, a corporation, should be able to influence their mayor, their governor, their senator, or politics in general to make policy decisions that benefit their company. I want to get rid of lobbyists. I don't agree with that. I don't think that is what the founding fathers wanted either. I think that if they were here today, they would say, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
The purpose of our country was not to have the wealthiest and the biggest corporations influencing governors. It's the people and their will that should be influencing the government. So that's what I keep going back to. We the people for the people, not we the corporations for the people. So,
I guess I hear you. All I offer is, when you're looking at those people driven organizations, or when you think there's movements, look at where they get their money from, follow the money. And I'm not saying it's just the right, or it's only, there are folks that invest a lot of money in making sure we're divided, and I don't want to be a useful tool for that system. And so I appreciate, because I see what I respect, your perspective as well, right? You're pushing back where you see opportunities, or where you think you should be pushing back. And so I don't disagree. I don't agree, in a lot of things, but hey, I appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah. It's been an hour.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think I need to avoid being right next to you on camera, because I've been in Chicago over the winter and you're in Florida. And so the paleness of my face and next to your tan, I look like a ghost, but it is what it is. I appreciate the last, almost 2 hours, man.
I appreciate my, part of my family that's Latin for that. My dad also is very pale, or he can get very pale and burns quickly, but that's I just kind of genetically lucked out on that one. But and man, I appreciate it. It's been like an hour and 47 minutes. I just want to give you a chance to, if people are still watching at this point, where can they find you? Where would you want to point them to? So maybe you have a book or something, whatever it is.
So I've got a TikTok. Honestly, I've been posting just kind of my perspective on some things. I don't know. Brian Wendle, find me, follow me. My guess. Don't yell at me. Be nice, engage in conversation like this. It's possible. You don't have to come in hot and tell me I'm an idiot or whatever, folks want to do, or I don't know. Yeah, that's me though. And I know we'll talk online as well.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, cool, man. And I would just end it on this note. I know a lot of my short form content is controversial. I get it. I understand. It is thought provoking at the minimum. It's definitely thought provoking. But people's attention spans are really short, and you got to draw them in. So it's not that I don't believe in the things I'm saying. I do, but there's a lot of nuance that I don't include in those videos that people would probably think, man, this guy's like some kind of psychopath. He's a crazy control freak. But that's why I do these. I like to, they could do the same, but I'm just saying that's short form media. So, but if you want to get views and you want to send a message, you kind of have to play by the rules of the game. And the rules of the game are people have a very short attention span. So that's why I like to do these long form discussions, because it gives both of us a chance to give more of our nuanced perspective and worldview.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, man. Thank you, Brian. It was a good time.
Thank you, RC. Yeah, we'll talk soon, man.